Today's story is so shocking it feels unreal, unfolding in the harsh silence of the Old West, where cold winds carried secrets and judgment traveled faster than the law. This was a land where danger wasn't always armed, and destiny crossed paths in the most unexpected way. It all started with a single reckless act, small enough to be ignored, yet powerful enough to awaken a force no one in that town was prepared for. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The winter of 1882 arrived ahead of its time in Silver Creek, Montana territory, riding in on a cruel wind that sliced through heavy wool and sank straight into bone. Main Street, usually alive with miners' boots and merchants' calls, sat nearly empty beneath a dull December sky that promised fresh snow before sundown. From inside the Lucky Strike saloon, the usual sounds drifted outward. Saturday noise in a frontier town. A sour piano fought to hold a tune. Glasses clinked. Men laughed roughly, chasing warmth, whiskey, and company. But that afternoon, something else pulled people from their doorways. A drunken shout, thick, slurred, ugly, cut across the street as Garen Kane burst through the saloon doors, dragging someone behind him. "Move, you useless thing!" he barked, his voice snapping like a lash in the frozen air. "Time someone else took you off my hands." The figure he yanked by the wrist was his daughter, Isolde Kane. At 19, she should have been a wife, maybe already a mother. Instead, Isolde had been born into silence, or so the town believed. A fever in infancy had damaged her hearing, and with it, whatever affection her father once had. That love curdled into shame, then fermented into cruelty as the years passed. She stumbled through slush and snow, her thin dress no match for the cold. Her winter shawl had been sold months earlier, for liquor. Isolde's dark hair fell loose and tangled around a face that might have been striking if not for the exhaustion carved into it, the look of someone who learned early to expect pain before it arrived. "She's deaf!" Garen shouted to the gathering crowd, swaying on his feet. Cheap whiskey rolled off him in waves. "Deaf as a fence post. Can't hear, can't talk right neither." Windows creaked open. Shopkeepers stepped outside. Saloon patrons spilled onto the boardwalk. In a town short on diversion, public shame drew eyes like flies to sugar. Idria Colwyn, the minister's wife, pulled her shawl tighter and whispered to the woman beside her, "That poor girl." Her voice trailed off. Someone should have stepped in. No one ever did. 19 years I fed this burden, Garen went on, spit flying. 19 years of disgrace. Her mother died bringing her into this world. And for what? He shook Isolde hard enough to make her stumble again. Isolde kept her eyes lowered, watching snow gather around her boots. She'd learned long ago that meeting a gaze only invited more harm. Even without hearing their words, she could read the revulsion on their faces. The judgment pressed down on her like stone. "So here's what I'm doing," Garen announced, spreading his arm wide as if addressing a stage. "I'm giving her away. Free to whoever'll take her." Uneasy laughter rippled through the crowd. Some men nudged each other, muttering crude remarks. Others stared, relieved the spectacle wasn't theirs to bear. "She can cook a little," Garen slurred. "Knows how to clean, don't talk back. Perfect woman, ain't she?" The laughter turned sharper. Jex Holt, the blacksmith's apprentice, stepped forward on instinct, but his master grabbed his shoulder. "Don't be stupid. That's family business." "And the law," Morven Pike added uneasily, "says a father's got rights." Isolde lifted her head just enough to scan the faces around her. She knew them. People she once served meals to. People whose laundry she'd washed for a few coins Garen didn't drink away. Not one would meet her eyes. "Come on," Garen shouted. "Someone take her." "She don't eat much. Hell, I'll throw in $5. He dug into his coat and pulled out a wrinkled bill. $5 to get this deaf burden off my hands. The crowd shifted. Even in a hard frontier town, there were limits. Selling your own daughter, damaged or not, sat wrong. But still, no one spoke. Isolde's fingers moved faintly, forming words in a private sign language she'd taught herself from a book long ago, before her father burned it. The motions meant nothing to anyone else, but to her, they were prayer. "Nobody?" Garen said, genuinely baffled. "She's young, got all her teeth, strong enough to work." He spun her around like livestock at auction. "Look at her. She ain't worth $5 to anyone." Old Vorn, a grizzled miner, spat into the snow. "Garen, you're drunk. Take the girl home." "Home?" Garen laughed bitterly. "What home? You think I can keep paying rent with this millstone round my neck? Vesaril already threatened eviction." The laughter died away. The wind kept blowing. And Isolde stood there, silent, as the town weighed her worth in the cold. The news unsettled some, though few were truly surprised. Garen Kane had been unraveling ever since his wife died, and the past year had only sped his collapse. First went the small homestead beyond town, then the sturdy furniture, then anything else that could be traded for drink. Now he rented a narrow room above the hardware store, and even that was slipping away. "Please!" Garen's voice cracked, sliding from rage into pitiful desperation, the way it often did with men who'd been drunk too long. "Someone's got to take her. I can't do it anymore." Isolde Kane did not move. Snow gathered on her shoulders, clung to her dark hair. She had learned how to shrink herself, how to take up as little space as possible. If she could have vanished altogether, she would have. From the doorway of his office, Sheriff Thorne Beckett had been watching. He let out a heavy breath and stepped forward, knowing he should end this. He never got the chance. The mood shifted as one. Heads turned. A figure was coming down the street, emerging from the swirling snow like something pulled from an old frontier tale. He stood close to 7 feet tall, his frame wrapped in a battered buffalo hide coat that had survived decades. Long black hair, streaked early with gray, hung past his shoulders. His face carried scars, the kind that discouraged questions. He was Apache. That much was plain in his features and the way he moved, fluid and silent, like a man who learned to stalk before he learned to speak. Yet beneath the hide, he wore a white man's clothing, and his boots were old cavalry issue, worn thin and carefully repaired. The crowd parted instinctively, as if pushed aside by an unseen force. Voices died. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Survival taught people this lesson early. You recognized danger when it walked toward you. Even Garen Kane, deep in drink, felt it. His grip on Isolde's wrist slackened. He took a step back. The Apache stopped 10 feet away. His dark eyes took in everything. The drunken father, the silent girl, the watching town. His gaze rested on Isolde. Something shifted there. Not pity. This man did not deal in pity, but recognition. When he spoke, his voice was low and steady, almost gentle, yet every soul on the street heard it. "I know you can hear." The words were not meant for Garen, not for the crowd. They were for Isolde alone. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. For the first time in 19 years, someone had pierced her secret. Silence stretched tight as wire. Her heart pounded as she fought the urge to run. How could he know? She had hidden it for so long, taken blows rather than admit the truth, that the fever had damaged her hearing, not destroyed it. She could hear faintly, as if the world spoke through water. The Apache waited, unmoving, patient as stone. Up close, the crowd noticed the details: the small beaded medicine pouch at his belt, the knife handle worn smooth by years of use, the way his eyes never stopped assessing, measuring danger even in stillness. He might have been 30. He might have been 50. Hard living blurred such lines. Garin found his voice, though it came out thin. Who the hell are you? The man's gaze slid to him. Garin stepped back again. My name is Rak, he said, his English careful, edged with accent. That is all. Well, Rak, Garin tried to sound commanding and failed. This don't concern you. It's family business. You offered her to anyone, Rak replied evenly. I am anyone. A murmur spread. That's the one lives up on Bear Mountain, someone whispered. Scouts for the army sometimes. Trades pelts in town, another added. Keeps to himself. Still Apache, a third voice muttered. Rak ignored them. His attention returned to Isolde. He extended one massive hand, palm open, a gesture that was both invitation and question. Isolde stared at it, then at his face. His eyes were dark, nearly black, but what stopped her was what she saw there, something no one had ever given her. Respect. You can't just, Garin sputtered. She's my daughter. $5? Rak reached into his coat and drew out a leather pouch. You named a price. Silver coins spilled into his palm. Not 5, but 10. Enough to drown debts. Enough to drown a man in drink for weeks. The crowd leaned closer, drawn by the glint. Garin's eyes locked onto the silver, hunger bare on his face. $10, Rak said calmly. For the insult. No woman should be sold like livestock. But if this ends her suffering... He let the words hang. Isolde watched, fear tightening in her chest, as the snow kept falling and the town weighed her fate in silver. Trading one cage for another was no kind of freedom. Isolde Kane knew the stories. Dark whispers about what Indians supposedly did to white women. Tales meant to scare children and excuse cruelty. But when she truly looked at this man, really studied him, those stories rang hollow. She saw no savagery promised by rumor. She saw scars earned through survival, hands powerful yet restrained, and eyes that had witnessed too much without turning empty. Deal! Garin Kane lurched forward, greed drowning the last of his fear. She's yours, Apache. Good riddance. He shoved Isolde hard enough to send her stumbling. Rak caught her arm instantly, steadying her with a gentleness that startled her. Standing so close, she caught the scent of wood smoke and pine, worn leather, and something wild, like forest air after rain. Her belongings? Rak asked. Garin barked an ugly laugh. What belongings? The dress on her back is about it. It was true. Everything Isolde owned fit into a small bundle hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the rented room above the hardware store. Her mother's bronze hairbrush, a few precious books, needle and thread, and the wooden doll Marin Kane had carved while waiting for her child to be born. She had learned early to travel light, to hide what mattered. At last, Sheriff Thorne Beckett forced his way through the crowd. Now wait just a moment. You can't just buy a person, even if she's deaf. Rak's voice sharpened. Even if her own father casts her into the street? Where were you 5 minutes ago, Sheriff? Beckett flushed. That's different. You were about to do nothing, Rak said calmly. As always. The rebuke came from another voice as well. Edria Colwyn, the minister's wife, stepped forward, her chin lifted. We all were. She turned to Isolde, tears shining. We've watched this child suffer for years and said nothing. I'm sorry, dear. All of us are. But Isolde wasn't looking at her. Her eyes were locked on Rak, who had begun signing, his large hands moving with quiet confidence. You choose, he signed. Come with me or stay. It is your decision. The shock nearly buckled her knees. Someone here spoke her hidden language. Her hands trembled as she answered. "You know signs?" "I once had a friend," he signed back. "A cavalry scout. Lost his hearing to cannon fire. His movements carried an older rhythm, military signals blended with plains trade signs. He taught me. Said silent speech was sacred. Lies don't survive in it." Her eyes burned. Years of isolation, of being treated as lesser, pressed against her chest. And here stood a man addressing her as an equal. Her hands moved carefully. Why? Why what? Why help me? Rock stilled for a moment. Then his hands moved again. "Because I know what it is to be judged as less than human, to be feared for what others don't understand." "What's all that hand-waving?" someone demanded from the crowd. "They're talking," Sheriff Thorne Beckett said slowly, realization dawning. "She's talking. But I thought she was deaf." "She is," Garin protested, silver already vanishing into his pockets. "Deaf and dumb." "Deaf, perhaps," Rock said aloud, never taking his eyes off Isolde. "Dumb? No." He signed again. "Will you come?" Isolde looked around, at faces filled with hostility, pity, or indifference. She thought of the cramped room above the store, of her father's fists fueled by drink, of 19 years spent as a burden, a shame, a thing to be hidden. Then she looked back at Rock. Still patient, offering not ownership but choice. She nodded. "Good," he said softly. Rock shrugged off his buffalo hide coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled of smoke and safety, swallowing her slight frame whole. "We leave now." "Wait." Garin's voice wavered as reality crept back in. "I didn't mean, she's my daughter." "She was," Rock replied evenly. "You took the silver, in front of witnesses." "She can't just walk off with a savage," Brusque Talvin cut in, the banker's son, young, polished, and arrogant beneath his waxed mustache. "It isn't decent." Rock didn't raise his voice, but his stance shifted, and suddenly his sighs seemed to fill the street. "More decent than selling her in public?" "You know what I mean?" Brusque pressed, pride blinding him. "A white woman with an Apache. People will talk." "People always talk." Rock turned his back on them, dismissal complete. He signed to Isolde. "My horse is at the end of the street. Can you ride?" "A little," she signed. "That will do." They moved forward together. The crowd parted reluctantly. Isolde kept her gaze ahead, shoulders straight, chin lifted, as she walked away from everything she had ever been, toward a future she had chosen herself. She could feel the weight of their stares pressing into her back. She sensed the whispers already forming. Yet wrapped in the buffalo hide coat, walking beside this scarred stranger who spoke to her as an equal, Isolde Kane felt something unfamiliar stirring inside her. Hope. Behind them, Garin Kane's voice cracked and rose in panic. "Isolde! Isolde, come back! I didn't mean it! I'm your father!" She did not turn. She had been deaf to his pleas long before she ever learned to shut her ears for good. Sensing the tension in her shoulders, Rock placed a gentle hand between them, guiding her forward without a word. At the far end of the street waited a painted horse, its black and white coat reminding Isolde of winter fields. Rock mounted easily despite his size, then reached down. She hesitated only a breath before taking his hand. He lifted her smoothly, settling her sideways in front of him. "This ain't over," Brusque Talvin shouted. "Sheriff, you can't just let him take her." Sheriff Thorne Beckett exhaled slowly. "No law's been broken, Brusque. Let it go." "But she's dead, unwanted," Beckett cut in, his voice hardening. "Which were you about to say? Because she's better off anywhere but here. As Rock turned the horse toward the mountain trail, Isolde caught one last glimpse of her father. Garin stood alone in the street, silver clutched in one fist, the other reaching out as though he could still pull her back. For a moment, she almost felt sorry for him. Then Rock clicked his tongue, and the horse moved on, carrying them away from Silver Creek and its judgment. Snow fell thicker now, erasing their tracks as soon as they were made. Isolde pulled the coat tighter and leaned back slightly against Rock's solid frame. She did not know what waited ahead. She did not know if she was exchanging one danger for another. But for the first time in 19 years, she was moving toward something, rather than simply surviving. And that, she decided as the town vanished into swirling white, was enough. The climb up Bear Mountain lasted nearly 3 hours through deepening snow and closing darkness. Isolde had never traveled this far beyond town, never known the wilderness except as a distant line of trees seen from a window. Now it surrounded them. Ancient pines stood like cathedral pillars, branches bowed under white, creating a hushed world where the only sounds were the horse's breath and the muted crunch of hooves. Rock rode in silence, but it was not the suffocating quiet she'd known before. This silence was steady, kind. Now and then, his hands moved in her peripheral vision, signing simple warnings. Hold tight. Low branch, almost there. The cold should have bitten deep, but wrapped in his coat with his warmth at her back, Isolde felt safer than she had in years. She found herself watching his hands on the reins, scarred, missing the tip of one finger, marked by a pale line across the knuckles that spoke of old violence. At last they stopped. Darkness had fully fallen. Isolde could barely make out the shape of a cabin tucked against a rock face, until Rock lit the lantern by the door. It was smaller than she'd imagined, but solid, logs fitted tight, real glass in the windows, a stone chimney breathing smoke into the night. "Wait," he signed. He dismounted first, then reached up to help her down. Her legs, stiff and numb from riding, wavered, and he steadied her with the same careful touch he'd shown in town. Inside, the cabin surprised her. Instead of dirt floors and rough living, she found clean wooden planks worn smooth by time. An iron stove glowed with heat. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, dozens of them. Tools hung neatly in place, bundles of herbs dried from the rafters, filling the air with sage and sweet grass. But what held her attention were the carvings. They were everywhere, intricate patterns flowing across furniture, small animals marching along shelves, larger figures standing alone. A wolf caught mid-howl, an eagle with wings spread wide, a woman's face emerging from the grain of wood, so lifelike Isolde expected her to blink. Rock followed her gaze. "My work," he signed, then added aloud, "It passes the winter." He moved with quiet familiarity, feeding the stove, lighting oil lamps, pulling food from a wooden chest. Isolde stood uncertain at the center of it all, still wrapped in his coat like armor. "Sit," he signed, guiding her to a chair by the stove. "You are safe here." Safe. Such a small word for something so large. As she sat, he filled a pot with snow and set it on the stove to melt. From a shelf he took down 2 ceramic mugs, store-bought, painted with tiny blue flowers. Seeing those delicate cups in his large, scarred hands eased something tight inside her. While the water heated, Rock went to a trunk in the corner. He opened it and lifted out folded cloth, a woman's dress of soft gray wool, mended but clean, and a shawl knit in patterns she didn't recognize. "They belonged to my sister," he signed, his movements slowing. "She died 5 winters ago." illness. He held the garments out to her. They would honor her if you wore them. Isolde accepted them with trembling hands. The fabric smelled of cedar and lavender. Carefully kept, carefully remembered. Through what remained of her hearing, she caught the depth of his voice. Thea was her English name, Rock said quietly. Small like you. Strong, too. Thank you, Isolde Kane signed. She pointed toward a corner of the cabin, silently asking permission to change. He nodded once and turned away, focusing on the kettle. Isolde slipped out of her damp, threadbare dress, drawing in a sharp breath as warm wool met her skin. The dress fit well enough, though she rolled the sleeves to free her hands. The shawl was impossibly soft, woven with a care that spoke of long winters and patient nights. When she returned, Rock had set the small table with the delicate cups. Steam curled upward from pine needle tea. Food had been laid out as well. Dried meat, travel bread, and, to her surprise, a small crock of honey. They ate without speaking. Still, Isolde's eyes kept wandering the cabin. Everything reflected intention, order, care. There were no empty bottles, no chaos left to chance. Even the firewood was stacked with near-ritual precision. How did you know? She finally signed. Rock lifted a brow. Know what? That I can hear. No one else ever did. He was quiet for a long moment, sipping his tea. Then his hands moved again. Your eyes. When your father shouted, you reacted before you saw him move. When horses passed on side streets, you turned toward the sound. He paused. Small things. I watch. I come to town twice a year. I notice what others ignore. His hands slowed. I saw him strike you last summer, behind the general store. Heat rushed to Isolde's cheeks with old shame. That day, the dropped sack of flour, her father's fury. Why didn't you? She began, then stopped. What could he have done? An Apache defending a white woman would have brought the town down on them both. I wanted to, Rock signed, answering the question she hadn't finished. But it would have harmed you. I learned long ago, sometimes waiting is the only mercy left. He rose and went to the shelves, lifting down a small wooden box. Inside were papers, carefully wrapped and preserved. He handed one to her. A certificate of citizenship, properly stamped. Legal. Archaic citizen of the United States Scout Corps, 7th Cavalry. You fought for the Army? She signed. Scouted, he replied. His movements carried a trace of bitterness. For a while. I thought it would change things. Thought if we proved ourselves, they'd let us keep some land. Some dignity. He shrugged. I was young. Isolde studied the paper, then him. This man could have used force in town, could have claimed power now that they were alone. Instead, he made tea and flowered cups and offered her his sister's clothes. Why did you really help me? She signed. Rock considered the question, hands still. Then he crossed to the shelf of carvings and selected one, a small bird with a broken wing. The detail was so fine she could see each feather. In the carving, the wing was splinted, slowly mending. Found him in the forest, he signed. A hawk struck him but didn't finish the kill. Most would have said, leave it to nature. He placed the carving in her hands. But sometimes nature needs help. Sometimes broken things deserve time to heal. Isolde traced the carved feathers, her throat tight. I am not broken, she signed fiercely. No, Rock agreed. But you were kept in a cage. That is different. He went to a chest and pulled out blankets and furs. You will sleep here, he signed, gesturing to the bed built into the wall. A real bed, with a proper mattress. I will take the floor by the stove. This is your place. You are my guest. His hands were firm, certain. Tomorrow we decide the rest. Tonight, you rest. You are safe. That word again. Safe. As Rock laid out his bedroll by the stove, giving her privacy, Isolde looked around the cabin once more. On a high shelf, something caught her breath. Women's things. A silver brush, a small mirror, a sewing basket spilling bright threads. "Your sister's," she signed when he glanced up. He nodded. "I couldn't put them away." A faint smile touched his scarred face. She loved beautiful things, said living in the wilderness didn't mean living like animals. Isolde thought of her mother's bronze brush hidden beneath a floorboard in town, the only lovely thing she owned. She sounds wise. She was. Rock banked the fire, movement steady and gentle. Sleep now. Tomorrow will be long. What happens tomorrow? He met her eyes across the dim cabin. You decide. Stay. Go. Learn. Whatever you choose. But tonight, you rest. Isolde lay down in the bed, the first real one she'd known in years. Pine needles and sweet grass scented the mattress. The blankets were warm, heavy with comfort. From where she rested, the carved animals on the shelves seemed to stir in the flickering firelight. And for the first time she could remember, sleep did not feel like escape, but like beginning. He watched Rock settle near the stove, his broad silhouette making the cabin feel smaller and steadier. He drew out a block of wood and a knife, carving by touch more than sight. The steady rasp of blade on grain worked like a lullaby. For the first time she could remember, Isolde Kane slept without dread for the morning. In that unfamiliar cabin high on the mountain, ringed by books, carvings, and the quiet presence of a man who treated her as human, she found what she had believed gone for good. Peace. Outside, snow kept falling, wiping away every trace of their trail and holding the rest of the world at a distance a little longer. 2 weeks passed before necessity pulled them back toward Silver Creek. The pelts Rock had trapped needed trading, and supplies were thinning. Isolde feared the return, but Rock's practical signs reminded her that winter stretched long, and hiding forever was a lie. The morning they descended, she wore Thea's clothes, a gray wool dress, properly hemmed now. The shawl was wrapped tight against the cold. Her hair was neatly braided in the style Rock had shown her, the way his sister once wore it. She looked cared for, respectable, nothing like the ragged girl dragged through town weeks earlier. Remember, Rock signed as the rooftops came into view. You owe them nothing. No explanations. No apologies. Even so, Isolde felt eyes settle on them the moment they reached Main Street. Conversations stalled. Women drew children closer. Men stepped from doorways to stare. Their first stop was Vesa Rill's general store. Flour, salt, coffee, the plain necessities. Rock tied the horse and helped Isolde down, his hand resting briefly at her elbow in quiet support. Inside, Vesa's face shifted. Surprise, curiosity, then something sharp. "Well," she said loudly, for everyone to hear, "look what the wind blew in." Rock moved with purpose, gathering goods while Isolde followed. Through her damaged hearing, she caught fragments of whispers. "Living in sin up there. Probably doesn't even know. What do you expect from an Apache?" At the counter, Vesa tallied with stiff, aggressive strokes. $2.40, she announced, then added with a syrupy edge. "Though I do wonder if the young lady understands the kind of arrangement she's entered." Isolde's fingers tightened in her shawl. Before she could answer, Rock placed the money down with measured calm. "She knows exactly where she is," he said quietly, "more than some." They were loading supplies when Brusque Talvin appeared, flanked by Dren Holt and Kase Wick. young men with idle time and thin judgment. Brusque had dressed for the moment, coat brushed, boots shined, as if presenting himself as the better choice. "Mrs. Kane," he called, ignoring Rock. "Isolde, you don't have to stay with him. We've arranged something. The church agreed to take you in." "You could work at the minister's house," he pressed. "Live respectable." Isolde felt Rock tense beside her, though he kept tying down the load. She turned to Brusque, her face steady. "She can't hear you, you fool," Dren laughed. "Though cleaned up like that. Shame about the years. She'd be pretty otherwise." "Pretty enough," Case added with a leer that crawled across her skin. Rock straightened slowly. The three men shifted back without meaning to. Brusque, bolstered by pride and his companions, pushed on. "We're trying to help," he insisted, now addressing Rock. "It ain't right. Her living up there with you. Folks are talking. Saying what an Apache would want with a white woman who can't even scream." The words hung, ugly in the cold. Isolde saw Rock's jaw set, his hands still. He didn't answer Brusque. He turned to her and signed, "Your choice. We can leave now." She shook her head. They needed the supplies, and she was done running. Isolde stepped forward and spoke, her voice rough from disuse, but clear. "I can hear you. Every filthy word." Shock rippled through their faces. She went on, stronger with each sentence. "I have always been able to hear, and I have heard what this town says about me, about him, about decency." "You can talk," Dren blurted, his voice cracking. "Where was your decency?" Isolde pressed. "When my father beat me? Where was the church when I was starving? Where were any of you when he tried to sell me like cattle?" "Now see here," Brusque began. "No." Her voice cut clean through him. "This man," she gestured to Rock, "has shown me more respect in 2 weeks than this entire town has in 19 years. He speaks to me. He teaches me. He treats me like a person, not a burden, not a curiosity, not something to pity." Edria Colwyn stepped out from the dress shop, drawn by the noise. Others gathered, the crowd swelling like it had that day in the snow. But this time, Isolde Kane stood straight, unafraid. "You call him savage," Isolde Kane went on, her voice steadier now, carrying across the cold street. "Yet he carves beauty from wood while you cultivate ugliness in your hearts. You speak of Christian charity while practicing none. So yes, I choose to stay with him, not because I must, because I want to." "And your reputation?" Edria Colwyn asked, true concern lining her face. "Dear, you surely know what people are saying, that he's made you his woman." Heat rose in Isolde's cheeks, but she did not look away. "He has made me nothing. For the first time in my life, I'm allowed to simply exist." Rock stepped beside her then, not touching, but present, solid as the mountain itself. "We finished here?" he asked the crowd. Brusque Talvin's face flushed red, then darkened. "This isn't over. Sheriff Thorne Beckett might look the other way, but there are laws about Indians corrupting white women. Federal marshals who have better things to do," Sheriff Beckett cut in, pushing through the gathering, "than harass a decorated Army scout and a grown woman making her own choices." He looked worn, older than his years. "Brusque, go home, all of you, go on." "But Sheriff," "I said go home." His voice left no room for argument. "Unless you'd like to explain yourself to Judge Osric Fenro." The crowd thinned, though whispers clung like smoke. Isolde caught the words. Fallen. Ruined. Corrupted. Once they would have crushed her. Now they felt small, powerless against the truth she carried. As they turned to leave, Garen Kane staggered out of the Lucky Strike. He looked as if he'd been living there since the snowstorm, clothes foul, face hollowed by drink. "Isolde," he slurred, stumbling toward them. My girl, come home. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. She studied him, really saw him for the first time. Not a monster, just a weak, broken man, poisoned by grief and shame until nothing remained but hunger and regret. I know, she said softly. But sorry doesn't erase the years. It doesn't heal bruises, or fill empty bellies, or warm cold nights. He reached out, hands shaking. You're all I have left. No, Isolde replied, gentle but unyielding. I was never what you had. I was what you endured. There's a difference. Rock clicked to the horse and they moved on. Garin followed a few faltering steps before collapsing to his knees in the mud, his sobs echoing off the storefronts. Isolde did not look back. At the edge of town, they passed the church. Reverend Malrek Colwyn stood on the steps with his wife. He lifted a hand as if to speak, then stopped. But Edria stepped forward. Wait, she called. From her basket she drew a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. Please, take this. Isolde glanced at Rock. He nodded. She accepted it, unsure. Just needles and good thread, Edria said quietly. And a book. Poetry. I thought you might like it. The kindness threatened Isolde more than all the cruelty had. Thank you, she managed. Edria touched her hand briefly. I'm sorry we failed you. We saw what we expected to see, not what was. Her gaze flicked to Rock. Both of you. They rode out in silence, but it was not the silence of fear. Isolde sat straighter now, no longer hiding in the buffalo coat, but wearing it like armor. The stares and whispers followed them, yet mattered less. You spoke well, Rock signed once the mountain trail rose beneath them. I was angry. Good, anger is better than fear. It tells the truth. What if Brusk makes trouble? Federal marshals? Rock's hands were steady. Let them come. I've faced worse for less. I'm important? She asked. He drew the reins, turning so she could see his face. Yes, he signed simply. You are. The word outweighed every whisper behind them. He clicked to the horse and they climbed higher, leaving Silver Creek and its narrow judgments below. Isolde knew it wasn't finished. Wounded pride in small men grew claws. The town's judgment would follow, hungry and demanding. But for now they rode toward home. And it was home. The cabin of carvings and books and patient silences, where she could be herself, whoever that became. The small package from Idria rested warm in her lap. A promise of beauty yet unseen. An unexpected gift amid hardship. And that, Isolde Kane thought as the town vanished among the trees, was reason enough to keep going. Winter deepened in the mountains, wrapping the cabin in a cocoon of white silence. The days settled into a rhythm Isolde Kane had never known. Steady, calm, purposeful. Each morning she woke to find Rock already awake, coaxing life into the fire, coffee simmering in the blue enameled pot. They moved around one another with an ease that grew naturally, two people learning how to share space without crowding it. He taught her what mattered. How to read the sky by the shape of clouds and the taste of wind. How to set snares for rabbits, skin and cure pelts, and recognize which winter plants could be eaten and which bark carried medicine. His hands were unhurried as he showed her knots for different uses, how to hone a blade until it sang, how to read a deer's path through snow. But the evenings were what she cherished most. By lamplight, Rock brought out books, his collection far richer than she ever imagined, gathered through years of trade with soldiers and travelers. There was Shakespeare and Emerson, bird guides of the Western Ranges, and a battered copy of Jane Eyre that had once belonged to Thea. Isolde devoured them all, her hunger for words matching the years she'd been denied them. Your hands learn fast. Rock signed one night as she practiced the plains trade signs he was teaching her. This language was unlike the secret signs she'd learned alone. Broader, meant to carry meaning across distance and between peoples. "I spent years hiding my words," she signed back. "Now I want to speak all of them." He smiled, rare and disarming. "Careful. Words have power, especially the silent ones." She learned other truths about him as well. How he sometimes woke in the night, sweat-soaked from dreams he never explained. How certain sounds, the snap of wood, a sharp whistle of wind through rock, set his body tight, ready for attack. And how gentle he was with small lives, feeding winter birds from his palm, nursing an injured fox kit until it ran again. One snowy evening, Isolde tried mending one of his shirts. He was hard on clothing. Her stitches wandered. She pricked her finger, blood beading bright. "Here," Rock said softly, taking the shirt. He showed her how to hold the needle, how to place stitches that would survive hard use. His hands guided hers, and she felt their warmth, their controlled strength. "Did Thaya teach you?" She signed when he leaned back. "My mother first," he replied. "Then Thea. Apache boys learn what keeps you alive. Sewing, cooking, building." Isolde wanted to ask about his past, the scars mapping his skin, but she'd learned he shared his history only when ready. Pressing brought silence, so she returned to the shirt, her stitches improving as the fire cracked and wind sang through the pines. It was in moments like this that she felt something shifting between them, an invisible thread tightening. As she reached for the scissors, her hand brushed his. Both froze. The touch was brief, accidental, yet it stole her breath. Rock's dark eyes met hers, and she saw the same uncertainty reflected there, a line approaching, neither sure about crossing it. He stepped back first, rising abruptly. "I'll check the horses," he said, though they both knew he'd done so already. Isolde watched him go, her hand tingling. In town, men had looked at her with pity, disgust, or hunger, the kind that fed on weakness. Rock looked at her as if she were something valuable and dangerous at once, worthy of care born from respect. Morning came clear and tense. Rock was teaching her to braid leather when the sound of horses cut through the quiet. Several riders. Fast. In seconds, he changed, rifle in hand, placing her behind solid cover. "Stay down, no matter what." But it wasn't raiders or federal marshals who emerged from the trees. It was a hunting party from town. 5 men led by brusque Talvin, armed and righteous. "We know you're in there, Apache," Brusque called. "Send the girl out. We're here to rescue her." Rock stepped onto the porch, rifle loose but ready. "No one here needs rescuing." "That's not for you to decide," snapped Morven Pike, the blacksmith, usually sensible, now caught up in Brusque's fury. "Isolde Kane, if you can hear us, we're here to help. Your father's sobered up." Isolde felt anger rise. Garen Kane sober. She'd believed that when pigs took wing. "We have a warrant," Brusque announced, producing a paper with pride. "Signed by Judge Osric Fenro in Cedar Falls, for the corruption of a mentally deficient white woman by a savage Indian." Mentally deficient. The words struck like a blow. Because she didn't hear perfectly, they decided she couldn't think, couldn't choose, couldn't own her life. She started to stand, but Rock's hand signal stopped her. "Let me see the warrant," he said evenly. Brusque dismounted, swaggering forward, until he came close enough to truly see Rock. The size of him, the scars, the complete absence of fear in his stance. His steps faltered, but pride shoved him onward. Rock took the paper and studied it without haste. "This is signed by a county judge with no authority here," he said evenly. "This land is federal ground, granted to me by treaty for my service." He handed the document back. And it names Martha Brennan. No such person lives here. Don't play games, Brusque Talvin snapped. We know she's here. Isolde Kane lives here, Rock replied. My wife. The word struck Isolde like lightning. Wife. They hadn't, yet Rock's gaze found hers through the doorway, calm and unwavering. Trust me. That's a lie, Brusque spat. She's not capable. I am perfectly capable, Isolde said, stepping forward. She came to Rock's side until their shoulders touched. I'm capable of choosing where I live, who I live with, and what name I take. Miss Kane, you don't understand, Morven Pike tried, his tone thick with condescension. This Indian has confused you, taken advantage. The only people who ever took advantage of me, Isolde cut in, were those who decided my damaged hearing meant a damaged mind, who spoke about me as if I wasn't present, who treated me like a burden or an opportunity, but never a person. But you're not married, Brusque insisted. No ceremony, no license. Isolde looked at Rock, question plain in her eyes. He gave the smallest nod. A tribal marriage requires 3 things, she said, recalling his teaching. 2 people choosing one another, a shared home, and a public declaration. She took Rock's hand, feeling its steady warmth. Rock is my husband by his people's law, and by my choice. The words came easily because they felt true enough. They had shared a home for weeks. They had chosen one another already, on the day in the snow. And now came the declaration. This is obscene, one man muttered. A white woman with a decorated army scout? Rock said, steel edging his voice. A man who owns his land free and clear? Who reads and writes 3 languages? Tell me, what is your objection, besides the color of my skin? You know damn well, Brusque exploded. It ain't natural. It ain't right. We won't stand for it. Then sit, Rock suggested mildly. Or better yet, go home. Brusque's hand twitched toward his gun. Morven Pike caught his arm. Don't be a fool. You draw on him, he'll kill you where you stand. Isolde felt it then. The truth of it. The others felt it too. Rock's readiness for violence, held in check by will alone. He wouldn't start a fight, but he would end one. This isn't over, Brusque promised, already backing toward his horse. We'll be back with real law, federal marshals. I'll make coffee, Rock said pleasantly. Hate to be a poor host. They watched the hunting party retreat, threats thinning with distance. Only then did Isolde realize she was still holding Rock's hand. She began to pull away, but he kept his grip gentle. I'm sorry, he said quietly. About the lie. But was it? The question escaped before she could stop it. He turned fully toward her, dark eyes searching. A ceremony doesn't make a marriage. The choice does. The living of it. His free hand rose to cup her cheek, feather light. I would choose you, Isolde. I have chosen you. But you must choose freely, not because of them. Years of loneliness softened beneath his touch. I choose you, she whispered. I chose you that day in the snow, when you saw me, spoke to me, offered your hand. He kissed her then, careful, unhurried, as if she might flee. She had never been kissed before. Yet this felt right, like warmth after a long winter. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. They'll return, with more men, more papers. It may get ugly. Let them come, Isolde said, finding iron in her spine. I've been preparing for ugly all my life. Now I have something worth fighting for. Rock smiled, that rare, transforming smile. My fierce little bird. They had no idea what they were provoking. Hand in hand, Isolde Kane and Rock stepped inside. The cabin felt altered, charged, like a place that had crossed a threshold. What had once been shelter was becoming something else entirely. A life, a future, a choice made in hope rather than fear. Outside, fresh snow began to fall, softening the tracks of the men who had retreated. Isolde knew they would return, carrying law and prejudice in equal measure, the weight of a world that rejected what it refused to understand. But for the moment, wrapped in warmth, with Rock's steady presence beside her and a quiet accord between them, she was content. Tomorrow would come soon enough. They would meet it together. The rumors began as murmurs, riding the winter wind down from Bear Mountain to Silver Creek. By the time they reached town, they had grown fangs, warped by repetition and spite. "She's with child," Morven Pike's wife whispered across Vessa Rill's counter, scandal thick in her voice. "My husband saw her when they faced that Apache. Said she looked different." Vessa's eyes gleamed at the prospect. "After only 2 months? Well, that tells us plenty, doesn't it?" By nightfall, everyone knew Isolde Kane carried the Apache's child. Never mind that she had been gone barely 8 weeks. In the arithmetic of prejudice, facts were optional. Brusque Talvin seized the tale with vicious delight. Humiliated by his failure, he found fresh fuel. "I warned you," he proclaimed in the lucky strike. "He's ruined her, defiled her, and now she'll bear his half-breed spawn." Even Sheriff Thorne Beckett, usually measured, felt a knot of unease. Children of mixed blood lived hard lives, trapped between worlds that wanted none of them, if Isolde were truly pregnant. High on the mountain, Isolde knew nothing of the storm below. Since she and Rock had declared themselves, the days carried a deeper sweetness. They still slept apart. Rock would not presume what she had not freely given. Yet everything else had shifted. They moved like partners who had found a rhythm. She woke to his gentle hands braiding her hair, beads and feathers woven in as signs of protection. He returned from the traps to find his winter gear mended and warm bread waiting. Small touches became natural, his hand at her back as they worked, her fingers brushing his as she passed tools. 3 weeks after Brusque's visit, they were forced back to town. A late blizzard had torn at the roof, and they needed specific supplies before the next storm. Isolde felt the change at once. Where once there had been curiosity or disdain, now there was a new look, horrified fascination, eyes dropping instinctively to her belly. In Vessa Rill's store, the assistant, Sileth Holt, gasped outright when Isolde entered, flushed scarlet, and fled to the back. "What's wrong?" Isolde signed to Rock, unsettled. He had noticed, too. His jaw tightened as he caught fragments of whispers. He signed back only, "Nothing that matters. Get what we need." They were choosing nails when Garen Kane burst through the door. Isolde had not seen her father since the day in the street. The change shocked her. He was sober, truly sober, but far too late. His body was wasted, skin yellowed by sickness, hands trembling with permanent shake. "My daughter," he croaked, lurching toward them. "My little girl, what has he done to you?" Isolde stepped back into Rock's solid presence. "Don't." Garen's eyes dropped to her stomach, still flat beneath the gray wool. "They're saying you're carrying his bastard, that he's planted his seed in you." The words were crude and loud enough for the store to hear. Heat flooded Isolde. Not shame, but fury. "The only bastard here," she said clearly, "is the one you made of me with your fists and your neglect." Garen sobbed. "I was trying to protect you, don't you see? This is what I feared. You're too simple, taken advantage of by the first savage who—" Rock moved before Garen finished. One heartbeat, he stood free. The next, he was pinned to the wall, Rock's hand at his throat. Not choking, controlling. You will not speak of her that way, Rock said, each word honed. Not ever again. She is my wife. You will show respect, or you will be silent. Your wife? Garen laughed bitterly. Your whore, you mean. Everyone knows what you've done to her, how you've ruined her for decent men. Isolde stepped forward and laid her hand on Rock's arm. At her touch, he released Garen, who sagged against the wall, breath ragged. Listen to me, she said, first to her father, then to the ring of faces, and finally to the whole narrow-minded town. Listen closely, because I will not repeat myself. I am not ruined. I am not defiled. I am not carrying a child. And if one day I am, it will be a blessing, never the curse you imagine. Isolde. Edria Colwyn stepped forward, drawn by the rising tension. No, Isolde cut her off without turning. You have all spoken over me for years. Now it is my turn. She straightened, strength rising from Rock's steady presence behind her. You invent these stories because the truth frightens you, that I chose him, freely and gladly. What you call corruption, I call deliverance. You don't know what you're saying, Garen Kane pleaded. You're confused. You're sick. I was sick, Isolde answered evenly. Sick from years of being beaten. Sick from being treated as less than human. Sick from a town that watched it happen and stayed silent. Her gaze swept the familiar faces. He healed me, not with magic or violation, but with simple decency, by seeing me as someone worth knowing. But the baby. Silith Holt had crept back into view, unable to resist. What baby? Isolde asked coldly. The one you all invented? The lie that makes your prejudice easier to swallow? There is no child, and when there is, it will be born of love, not the violence you imagine. Harlot, someone whispered. If she heard it, she did not flinch. If choosing love over fear makes me that, she said calmly, then I will wear the name with pride. Rock had stayed silent through it all. Now he gathered their supplies with deliberate care. We are finished here, he said. At the counter he paid Vessa Rill to the penny, then added, We will not return. We will trade in Cedar Falls. Their coins spend the same, and their tongues wag less. They were turning to leave when brusque Talvin burst through the door with two strangers wearing federal badges. There they are, he crowed, the Apache and the woman he's corrupted. The older marshal, weathered, weary, studied them. Samuel Crowfeather? I am Rock, he replied. We've received complaints, the marshal said. Claims you're holding a white woman against her will. Isolde met his eyes. Do I look restrained? He took in her neat hair, clean dress, and the way she stood beside Rock by choice. No, ma'am. But I must ask, are you here freely? Has this man harmed or forced you? The only force used, Isolde said clearly, was by those trying to separate us. My husband has shown me nothing but respect. Husband? The marshal raised a brow. By Apache custom, Rock said, recognized under treaty law. The marshal exhaled. People here say the lady is simple-minded, unable to choose. Isolde laughed. Short, sharp, surprising. I speak 3 languages now, English, sign, and plains trade talk. I read and write, set traps, dress game, name 30 medicinal plants, and track deer through fresh snow. If that's simple-minded, what does that make them? The marshal's mouth twitched. Point taken. He turned on brusque. I see no crime, no coercion. What I see is a lawful union between adults some folks dislike. That's not federal business. But she's pregnant, Brusque shouted. With his mongrel. Am I? Isolde placed her hands on her flat stomach. Dr. Iram Rill, you've delivered half this town. Examine me. Tell them. The doctor shook his head from his doorway. No need. Anyone can see she isn't. 2 months doesn't show, for one thing. Then where did the rumor come from? Isolde asked mildly. Silence answered. Even the marshals looked disgusted. That's enough, the marshal said. If I ride back here over more false reports, someone will be charged with filing them. That is federal. As the badges left, Brusque glared at Isolde. You think you've won? No decent person will ever accept you. You'll be outcasts forever. She stopped Rock with a touch. Good, she said simply. If decency means being small, cruel, and afraid, I want none of it. I'd rather be an outcast with him than accepted by you. She faced her father one last time. Goodbye, Garin. I forgive you. But I am done. Do not seek me again. They walked out through the parted crowd. Behind them the town erupted. Arguments, excuses, blame. But Isolde did not look back. She was finished with Silver Creek and its narrow thinking. At the edge of town, Rock lifted her onto the horse with practiced ease. You spoke well, he said quietly, like a warrior. I am a warrior, Isolde Kane answered. You taught me that. As they rode toward the mountain, she thought of the rumors already taking shape behind them, the lies, the judgment, the poison that would trail their names. It didn't matter. Let them invent whatever stories they needed to survive their smallness. The truth, that she had found strength, dignity, and love in freedom beside this quiet, scarred man, was more dangerous than any lie. There will be children someday, she said suddenly, her voice steady. When we're ready. And they'll be beautiful. Rock's arms tightened around her. They'll be fighters. They'll have to be, Isolde replied fiercely. The world needs them. Behind them, Silver Creek dwindled into darkness, carrying its prejudice with it. Ahead lay Bear Mountain, the cabin, the life they were building together. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth claiming ever was. But it was theirs. Night fell fast, as mountain nights do. Clear skies vanished beneath rolling clouds that advanced like an invading force. Isolde woke to horses, many horses, and Rock's hand firm on her shoulder. They're here, he signed in the dark. Dress, quickly. Through the window she saw torches weaving through the trees, a dozen at least, maybe more. Her heart thundered as she pulled on clothes, fingers unsteady. They had known this would come. After the confrontation in town. After the federal marshals refused to intervene. She had seen the promise of violence burning in Brusque Talvin's eyes. Rock was already armed, rifle ready, pistol low at his hip. He stood by the window, still as stone, counting shadows and movement like a predator weighing the cost. How many? She signed. 15. Maybe 20. Too many. The riders stopped just beyond rifle range, torches forming a half-circle of angry light. Brusque Talvin sat at their head. Isolde recognized others. Dren Holt, Case Wick, men from town drunk on righteousness and fear. Crowfeather, Brusque shouted. Send the woman out and we'll let you live. Rock laughed softly, a sound colder than the wind. Generous. This is your last chance, Brusque snarled. The whole territory knows what you've done to her. It ends tonight. Isolde moved for the door. Rock caught her arm. No. They'll hurt you because of me. They'll hurt me either way, she signed back. His eyes burned in the torchlight. Together, he signed. Or not at all. You've got 1 minute, Brusque yelled. Then we burn you out. Isolde's mind raced. 20 armed men. Even Rock couldn't fight those odds. But maybe fighting wasn't the answer. Trust me, she signed. Before he could stop her, she opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Isolde! Voices shouted, some relieved, some furious. She stood tall beneath the torchlight. She had loosened her hair, letting it fall wild over her shoulders. With her chin raised and eyes blazing, she looked nothing like the girl they remembered. She looked like a woman forged. "You want me?" Her voice carried, clear and fearless. "Then get off your horses and take me." Unease rippled through the men. This was not the silent, broken girl they had dragged through town. "Come down, Miss Kane," Morven Pike called, forcing a gentle tone. "We're here to help." "Help?" Isolde laughed, sharp as shattered glass. "Where was your help when my father beat me? When I starved? You're not here to help. You're here because you can't stand that I chose him over all of you." "You didn't choose," Brusque spat. "You were confused, corrupted. He's twisted your mind." "Yes," Isolde said softly. "He has." She stepped forward. Horses shifted nervously. "He's taught me to read the stars, to speak without sound, to move unseen through forest and snow. He's shown me medicines you've never imagined, things you'd call witchcraft." "What are you doing?" Rock signed from the doorway. Using their fear, she signed back, hidden from the rider's eyes. "So you admit it," Drenholt shouted. Isolde smiled slowly, and the men felt it, an ancient fear waking in their bones. Her voice trembled. "He's corrupted you with Indian magic." "Magic?" Isolde Kane smiled, and there was nothing gentle in it. "That's what you call it when a man treats a woman with dignity? When he sees her as more than property, more than a burden?" She spread her arms. "Then yes, I'm corrupted, completely, changed." She lifted her hands and began to speak in Plains trade talk, her motions smooth, her words strange and guttural to their ears. To them, it looked like a curse, dark words calling down unseen forces. In truth, she was signing calmly. "The moon is beautiful tonight. These men are fools. I hope the coffee is still warm." Horses shifted and stamped, reacting to the fear of their riders. The men had come expecting to seize a helpless woman. Instead, they faced something unfamiliar, a white woman who had crossed into another world and returned transformed. "Stop that," Brusque Talvin barked, lifting his rifle. "Stop that devil talk." That was when Rock stepped into view, moving with the quiet, fluid grace that marked him as dangerous. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't need to. The air itself seemed to tighten around him. "You point a gun at my wife again," he said evenly, "and I'll kill you where you sit." "There's 20 of us and 2 of you," Brusque blustered, though his voice lacked force. "Yes," Rock agreed. "I won't get all of you, but I'll get you first, Talvin. And you, Drenholt. And you, Case Wick." He paused. "So who wants to die for this? Who wants to explain to their widow why they were killed attacking a man's home in the night?" Silence stretched tight. Isolde watched their resolve falter, bravado cooling as fast as spilled blood. They had expected fear, begging, an easy victory. Not this. "You can't hide behind her forever," Brusque tried again. "The whole territory will know what you are." "Peace." Isolde laughed sharply. "You think we had peace before? Your whispers, your judgments, your small cruelties, that wasn't peace." She stepped beside Rock, their shoulders touching. "We'll make our own peace. Far from here, far from you." "You're leaving?" Morven Pike asked, almost disappointed. "Why would we stay?" Isolde replied. "This town has shown us exactly what it is." "There are other places," she went on, "other towns, people who judge by actions, not blood, who see a woman's worth beyond her hearing. It was mostly a lie." They both knew it, but the idea that they might take their scandal elsewhere unsettled the men. "Good riddance," someone muttered. "Yes," Isolde said calmly. "Good riddance, but hear this." Her voice hardened. "If any of you follow us, if any of you hunt us, You'll learn what Apache justice looks like, and what a woman who's found her strength can do." She raised her hand, signing something complex in the firelight. Several men crossed themselves. "Go," Rock said quietly, "before I decide those odds sound entertaining." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Brusque Talvin spat, turned his horse, and rode off. "This isn't over," he promised. But he was already leaving. The others followed, courage dissolving like morning mist. Isolde and Rock stood until the last torch vanished into the trees. Only then did she sag against him, adrenaline draining from her limbs. "That was dangerous," he murmured. "Everything is now." She met his eyes. "We have to leave. They'll come back, with more men or law or worse." "I know." His hand cupped her face. "I'm sorry. This is because of me. If I wasn't with you," she said softly, holding his hand, "I'd already be dead, in spirit, or by my father's hand." They went inside, but sleep never came. Instead, they sat by the fire, planning routes, supplies, and places where two people might disappear into the vast West. "California," Rock suggested. "I have a cousin near Sacramento, or Oregon." "Anywhere," Isolde said, "as long as it's together." At dawn, a single horse approached. They tensed, but it was Idria Colwyn, riding alone. "I'm sorry," she called out. "For last night, for all of it. I came to warn you. Brusque Talvin is riding to Fort Laramie. He plans to claim your hostel, try to bring federal troops." "We're leaving anyway," Isolde said. "I thought you might." Idria dismounted, pulling a small bag from her saddle. "Here, it's not much. Money, food, and this." She placed an envelope in Isolde's hands. Inside the envelope lay a letter of recommendation, written in careful script. It praised Isolde Kane's character, her sharp mind, her decency. It spoke of her worth as a woman and as a person. The signatures at the bottom belonged to Reverend Malrec Colwyn and several respected figures from town. "It might help," Idria Colwyn said quietly. She hesitated, then added, "Wherever you're headed, I want you to know something. Not everyone in that town agrees with what was done to you. Some of us are ashamed." Isolde swallowed hard. "You deserved better," Idria said, her voice fierce now. "Be happy, both of you. Be happy and prove them wrong." Then she mounted her horse and rode off without looking back, as if staying a moment longer might undo her resolve. Isolde and Rock stood in the yard as the sun climbed over the mountains they had once called home. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Isolde looked at the cabin where she had learned who she truly was, then at the man who had taught her what love meant. Ahead lay uncertainty, hardship, suspicion, danger. But there would also be freedom, possibility, hope. "I'm ready," she said. There was work to do, packing what little they could carry, preparing for a journey that might never truly end. For now, they stood together in the morning light, two people who had found one another against all odds. And to Isolde, that felt like victory enough. They never reached California. 3 days into their journey, camped beside a creek swollen with snowmelt, the past caught up with them one last time. Isolde was filling their water skins when she heard horses, not the wild thunder of a mob, but the measured approach of men who knew their trade. Rock was already moving, rifle in hand, but he stopped when he saw who rode at the front. Sheriff Thorne Beckett, worn down by years and hard miles, approached with 2 deputies Isolde didn't recognize. No Brusque Talvin, no drunken crowd, just the law, muddy and exhausted. "Rock," Beckett called, hands open. "Isolde, we need to talk." "Then talk," Rock replied, weapon lowered but ready. Beckett dismounted slowly, like a man carrying a burden he didn't want. "There's been an incident." Isolde braced herself. "Garen Kane is dead." The words struck like blows. She wasn't surprised. Not truly. Her father had been killing himself for years with bitterness and drink. "How?" she asked. "He tried to burn down the Lucky Strike," Beckett said grimly. "Said they all deserved it for taking you from him. He was too drunk to escape when the fire spread." Beckett hesitated. But before he died, he talked. Rock stiffened. "Sheriff." "She needs to hear this," Beckett said gently. "Garin confessed he'd been taking money from your mother's family back east. Every month, for 19 years, payment to keep you hidden, to never let you learn the truth or contact them." Isolde's knees nearly buckled. "My mother had family?" "In Boston," Beckett said. "Wealthy. They opposed her marriage. When Marin Kane died, they wanted you. Garin saw an opportunity, told them you were incapable, unfit to travel." Isolde's chest tightened. "They've been sending money for your care ever since." All those years of hunger, of cold, while her father drank away the money meant to protect her. "There's more," Beckett continued. "They're here." Her hands began to shake as she signed. "Who?" "Your grandmother, Althea Morland, and your aunt, Isabel Morland." They had come to claim her. "They want only you," Beckett added quietly, glancing at Rock. "Not your husband." The silence stretched thin. Isolde felt Rock beside her. Still, steady, ready for whatever choice she made. Always her choice. "Where are they?" she asked. "In my office. They wanted to come themselves. I convinced them to let me find you first." Beckett met her eyes. "They're offering everything. Education, comfort, a life in Boston. All you have to do is leave. Leave him. And if I don't, then they leave without you. They were clear about that." Isolde looked at Rock. She saw the truth in his eyes. He would let her go. He would want her to go if it meant a better life. That was who he was. Always putting her first. "When do they need an answer?" Isolde Kane asked. "Tomorrow at noon," Sheriff Thorne Beckett replied. "With you or without you." After he rode away, Isolde and Rock sat beside their small fire, the crackle of wood the only sound between them. The offer lingered like a third presence, heavy and impossible to ignore. At last, Rock signed, "You should go." "This is your chance at the life you deserve." "The life I deserve is with you," Isolde answered at once. "In Boston," he continued carefully, "you could be anything, do anything. No one would know about your hearing, about your past. You could begin again." She stood abruptly, anger flashing through her chest. "Is that what you think I want? To hide who I am? To erase these months like they never mattered?" "I only want you happy," he said. "Then listen to me," she said, dropping to her knees before him and taking his scarred hands in hers. "Really listen. You saved me, not from my father, not from the town, but from the prison inside my own mind. You taught me I was worth something." She searched his eyes. "Do you think money could replace that? Do you think Boston society could give me what you already have?" Her voice hardened with certainty. "I choose you. Today, tomorrow, every day after. Not because I have to, but because I want to. A life without you would be worse than any hardship we might face together." He pulled her into his arms, as if afraid she might disappear. "You humble me," he whispered into her hair. "Good," she whispered back. "Someone should." The next morning they rode together back into Silver Creek. The town felt smaller now, less important. Isolde wore her best dress, Marin Kane's old wool dress, and had braided her hair the way Rock had taught her, beads and feathers chosen by her own hand. Sheriff Thorne Beckett's office was crowded. Althea Morland sat stiffly in black traveling clothes, her face a sharper, older echo of the portrait Isolde remembered of her mother. Beside her stood Isabel Moreland, watching with open curiosity. "Isolde," Althea said coolly. "My goodness, you look well." "Well, grandmother," Isolde replied. The word felt strange, but steady. "We've come to take you home," Althea announced. "Your father's lies have been uncovered. There's no reason for you to remain in this situation." "My husband, you mean?" Isolde rested her hand on Rock's arm. "This situation is my life, and it's my choice." Isabel leaned forward. "You can't truly mean to stay here. You don't understand what you're giving up." "I understand perfectly," Isolde said. "I'm giving up people who abandoned me for 19 years, who sent money to quiet their conscience but never once asked if I was alive." "Your father told us," Althea began. "My father lied," Isolde cut in, "and you never questioned it. Never wondered if a child might need more than money." Althea flushed. "How dare you? How dare I?" Isolde laughed, not bitterly, but free of it. "I dare because I know my worth now, not from bloodlines or money or Boston society, but from a man who saw me when I was invisible, who heard me when I was silent." "This is absurd," Althea snapped, rising. "You're coming with us. I'll have you declared incompetent if I must." "Try," Isolde said calmly. Rock spoke then, his voice low and unyielding. "See how far you get." Beckett cleared his throat. "Mrs. Moreland, Isolde is a legal adult, and she is married. You have no claim on her." "Married to a savage?" Althea spat. "Married to a man," Isolde corrected. "A good man, the best man." She looked at her grandmother with quiet pity. "I'm sorry you came so far for nothing. But I have a life here, a real one, not the pretty prison you're offering." Isabel spoke softly. "Isolde, think of your future. Children. Do you want them raised under this kind of prejudice?" "Yes," Isolde answered without hesitation. "I want them raised strong, knowing their worth doesn't come from approval, knowing love matters more than comfort." She turned away, finished. "If you ever want to know me, truly know me, you can write. Sheriff Beckett will forward letters, but I won't pretend to be someone I'm not for you, not for anyone." They stepped outside to find a crowd gathered, nearly the whole town drawn by rumor and spectacle. But something had changed. Isolde Kane saw the change written across their faces. This was the woman who had stood against a mob, who had turned away wealth, comfort, and blood ties for love. She was no longer the deaf girl they had dismissed and pitied. As she and Rock walked toward their horses, Edria Colwyn stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. "Isolde," she said loudly, clearly, for everyone to hear. "God bless you both." A few voices followed. Not many, but enough. The blacksmith's apprentice nodded. Dr. Iram Rill offered a quiet bow. Even Sileth Holt, cheeks burning red, stood straighter than before. That was all Isolde needed. They rode out of Silver Creek for the final time. But now she understood something she hadn't before. They weren't running. The cabin on Bear Mountain was theirs, by right, by choice. They would stay, they would build a life, and they would face whatever came together. That evening, snow began to fall again. They stood outside the cabin, looking down into the valley. Far below, the lights of Silver Creek flickered, small, distant, belonging to another world now. "Any regrets?" Rock asked softly, his arms wrapping around her from behind. "None," Isolde answered, leaning back into his warmth. "You?" "Only that it took so long to find you." She turned in his arms, lifting her hand to his scarred face. "We found each other. That's what matters." He kissed her then, gentle, unhurried, as snow drifted around them like a blessing. Inside the cabin, Their life waited. Simple, sometimes hard, entirely theirs. "I love you," Isolde said against his lips, the words still new enough to make her heart race. "And I love you," Rock replied. "My fierce little bird, my warrior woman, my wife." They stepped inside together, closing the door on the cold and on the past. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Prejudice would not vanish overnight. Judgment would still exist. But tonight, in a cabin filled with books, carvings, and possibility, they were simply two people who had chosen one another against all odds. And in that choice, they had found a love worth every sacrifice. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the mountain in clean white. A new beginning. A blank page. A future written not by the expectations of others, but by their own hands, their own hearts, and their unbreakable choice. Together. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Your presence means more than you know. If today's story awakened something inside you, don't let the trail end here. There are many more tales of courage, devotion, and faith waiting to be discovered. Subscribe, comment, share, and come back as we continue this unforgettable journey. Thank you, truly. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. All stories are intended solely for entertainment and may include fictionalized scenarios or dramatization derived from historical contexts. While AI assists in production, human creators supervise and adjust every piece to maintain sincerity, credibility, and emotional quality. We adhere entirely to platform regulations regarding AI content, ensuring no deepfakes or misleading portrayals. Licensed materials are used responsibly. Republishing, modifying, or extracting content without authorization is not allowed. We appreciate every viewer who respects originality and creative effort.